Now, there's a good chance as you're sitting there watching this video, you're sitting in a school that is dedicated to a particular saint in the history of the church. And even if your school isn't dedicated to a saint, your local church might be. And all of this might raise the question, how does somebody become a saint? Well, simply put, you gotta die. That's the first thing. In order to be recognized by the church as a saint, you need to be dead.
He's dead, Captain.
And normally there's a 5-year cooling off period before the church will investigate someone for their cause for what's called canonization. This is how we recognize somebody as a saint. But once those 5 years have passed, the questions raised usually by your local church, passed on to the bishop, and eventually submitted to Rome, to the Congregation for Saints. And what's investigated in this whole process is, people who knew you, who can speak to your character, to the person that you became at the end of your life. Not a question that you were perfect all the way along, but did you become this model of holiness by the time you died? People who investigate your writings. If you were somebody who spoke on religious topics or who reflected on faith, what sorts of things did you say? Are you somebody who was martyred for your faith, who sacrificed themselves for the sake of another or for the sake of what's true, good, and beautiful? If all of these investigations find that, yes, you are somebody who has lived a life of heroic virtue, well, then you reach a point where all we need to wait for is miracles. And unless you were martyred, we need 2 of them. If you're martyred, we only need 1. But these miracles need to be verifiable, meaning that there's no other scientific, medical explanation for the fact that somebody was cured, somebody was healed, thanks in part to your prayers from heaven. Because in a lot of ways, to be recognized as a saint really comes down to the church officially recognizing that you are in fact in heaven. You are with God, and therefore, when we ask you to pray for us, you have kind of that direct, right there pipeline to pray for us. Once these 2 miracles have happened, have been verified, well then usually, under the guidance of the Pope, a Mass is celebrated, canonizing you as a saint, and the whole church can now stand and use you as an example of what it is to be a person who's lived a life of heroic virtue. Okay, so all of this is good and fine. I've now explained to you the entire process about how somebody is recognized as a saint, but this doesn't tell you how they became a saint in the first place. The reality is when somebody dies, the reality of whether or not they go to heaven isn't determined by the church here on earth. There are plenty of people who are saints, who are in heaven, who are with God, who have never and may never be recognized by the church as such. But what all the saints who are recognized and all the ones who are not recognized have in common is that they would look you in the eyes and they would say to you, you are called to be a saint. This is what God made you for. This is why God put you here. So how do you become a saint yourself? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Jesus gave us the cheat sheet for the final exam. When he is confronted and asked, what is the first and greatest commandment? His response is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So if you want to put it a different way, it means that you need to learn to love God first. You need to learn to love your neighbor second. And you need to become third. So if you guys have ever wondered, what's the deal with I am third, Mike is third, what's going on there? Well, this is meant to be a reminder to me that part of my mission, part of my responsibility in life is to become a saint. I need to grow in my love for God by praying every day, by going to church, by reading his word, by knowing more about him. I need to love my neighbor as myself, beginning with my family, but extending to all those around me, including all of you. And loving your neighbor isn't always doing huge, great, big, heroic acts.
Saruman believes that it is only great power that can hold evil in check. But that is not what I have found. I found it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keeps the darkness at bay.
St. Teresa of Calcutta talked about the need to do small things with great love. You are called to be a saint. And so the invitation here, it's really simple. What are the small things that you can do today to love your neighbor? How are you investing yourself in your relationship with God? Basically, how are you living? Third. If you have any questions or suggestions for a future episode of this show, jump onto the contact page at mikeisthird.com and send me a message. God bless you all.